to move out of this pandemic. I look forward to hearing from Governor Raimondo today on her and President Biden's goals for the Department of Commerce, if she is confirmed as Secretary, which I expect will certainly occur. This confirmation hearing is just the starting point for our conversation about vital policy matters, including responding to the economic damage caused by the pandemic, investing in our people and small businesses, ensuring that American workers and manufacturers can compete fairly in the global market, growing the marine economy through the promotion of transportation, seafood, shipbuilding, and technological innovation and research, promoting 5G deployment and increasing rural broadband access, improving our nation's cybersecurity, and elevating space commerce at the department. These issues are critically important to my constituents in Mississippi and to all Americans. I believe Governor Raimondo, as governor of a maritime state, understands the need for effective oceans and fisheries policies. I hope she will be a strong advocate on these issues as Secretary of Commerce. I appreciate that Governor Raimondo is testifying remotely today. Let me say to the members and our guests who are listening that Governor Raimondo offered to come and attend this hearing in person, but after consultation with me and Senator Cantwell, we certainly agreed that the governor is needed for pressing duties back in Rhode Island as she is still serving as governor during trying times there. So I appreciate her willingness to accommodate us, and I look forward to hearing her thoughts on how we can work together to find solutions to the challenges before us. I want to thank Governor Raimondo for appearing before this committee today and for her willingness to serve her country in this prominent and essential role. Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize in advance if I go a little long, but I have a lot of things to cover. But first, I too want to congratulate Governor Raimondo on being nominated to be Secretary of Commerce. I too am excited about her nomination and the fact that she has both public and private sector experience. I think that this will be a big help to us and to the Biden administration as we work on a variety of commerce issues, from trade, competition, economic stability, growing opportunities for all Americans. Governor Raimondo's record in the public sector working on how to empower entrepreneurs and skilled workers as part of the Real Jobs Rhode Island initiative, I think is exactly the kind of skill set that we need to match the skills development and the business needs to better grow our economy. I too am grateful for her understanding of important issues as it relates to both science and to fisheries. Having a great deal of understanding of oceans, fisheries, and the investment in science, I think, will greatly help us at the Department of Commerce, where the budget oversight is a very big task of the Secretary of Commerce. And as we have, I think, more than a dozen members of this committee, including you, Mr. Chairman, who these maritime, oceans, and fisheries issues are very big issues, particularly in a changing climate. Couldn't come at a better time to have a Secretary of Commerce who really does understand fish issues. So I appreciate that about her. And I appreciate that she will lead the agency in making decisions based on science and data that will help our economy grow in the future, everything from these oceans issues and fisheries to spectrum and space issues. I hope that she will speak out today and say that she opposes any kind of censorship of scientific information at the Department of NOAA and fully expects to hear from scientists on these important issues. We in the Pacific Northwest know that we can't always agree on issues, but we know we can agree on science, and that's why science needs to continue to prevail. Also, we need to make sure that this issue of spectrum and the issues related to spectrum are important. Well, let me actually for a second go back to the science of fisheries issues for a second. There are a whole host of issues where we need smart strategies on salmon recovery, stormwater and habitat investments. We need smart strategies on our orca population that is threatened in Puget Sound. We need smart strategies on stock assessments and fishery management strategies. I know my colleague from Alaska could weigh in on this issue, but smart fishery management strategies is what will help save our fisheries in an ever-changing economy. In 2018, commercial fishermen caught more than 9.8 billion pounds of seafood, and that in turn supported seafood processors, shipbuilders, trade, and restaurant jobs. And marine anglers took more than 194 million fishing trips, which fueled our outdoor recreational economy. So in total, there are more than 1 million jobs in the seafood sector, and there are important science issues that need to be addressed there, as I mentioned. So the other area that I was mentioning is this issue of spectrum and weather forecasting. And in my opinion, there's no reason why the United States should not be a leader in weather forecasting. This is an important issue for us, whether you're talking about fires or you're talking about ocean issues. So making a better crucial investment in the science for maritime, aviation, space, and agriculture industries will be very important for us moving forward. During the last 4 years, the FCC, I believe, ran roughshod over concerns raised by various committees within Congress on these airwave issues, critical to weather data adjacent to the 24 gigahertz band, critical to systems dependent on GPS, and threatened by the Legato decision. So I'm hoping that a Commerce Secretary will take these issues and help the administration prioritize how we can get on the same page, and also work with us on these important issues of national security. The chairman worked so hard on the issues of Huawei and rip and replace and making sure that the American infrastructure was going to be secure from the future of threats and violations. I hope the Commerce Secretary will work with us on these security issues on our communication system as we move forward. And the Secretary will inherit a new program as part of the COVID bill, the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. A 2019 report from FCC found that less than half of households in Indian country have access to high-speed broadband services, a 20% gap from non-tribal areas. And so I hope that we will be able to get good administration of that program. As the chairman mentioned, one of the key responsibilities will be in response to the larger COVID pandemic in the country and what we should do about it. I hope that the Secretary of Commerce will play an important role in strengthening our economy, in trying to defeat the pandemic and recover from its economic impacts. I think this is a critical job of the Commerce Secretary as we continue to see the impacts of COVID on our economy. Again, seafood exports dropped by 31% since 2020 and 44% since February of 2020. So all of our sectors have been impacted, and Congress has appropriated $600 million in fisheries assistance for state and tribal needs, but so far the fishermen in our state have yet to receive $1 from this program. So I hope that we can get her assistance in implementing and moving forward on this, as well as working with us on other aspects of COVID relief package moving forward, particularly in the area of manufacturing. I know my colleague from Kansas, Senator Moran, and I are very interested in how we continue to keep an aerospace manufacturing sector going at a time when we've seen decrease in demand. And the COVID pandemic will also have to help us deal with minority-owned businesses who were greatly impacted by the pandemic and have received less help and support. So the Office of Minority Business Development, I believe, is an agency that can help focus us on these issues. And the Department of Commerce, I think, continues to have a leadership role in our competitiveness as a nation. I hope that we will continue to look at this issue of competitiveness. In my state, 1 in 4 jobs are related to trade, and I hope that the Secretary and the administration will make a goal for export advancement. Increasing exports is a great way to grow our economy. The last Democratic administration had a goal of increasing exports 50% over a 5-year window and came pretty close to making that. I hope that we will continue to move our trade export agenda and that the Secretary of Commerce will help on that. And then lastly, the census. I We don't need a politicization of the census. We need accurate data and information. For every 100 households missed in the 2020 census, the state could lose up to $5.8 million. So we need to get this right because children and veterans and seniors and families are dependent on how this formula works. And I hope that we will have a less political process, but one that gives us an accurate census moving forward. So Governor Raimondo, that is a big agenda item to cover for Secretary of Commerce, but as I said, very confident that your public and private sector experience will help us deal with these issues and your great depth and knowledge, both about the competitiveness that America needs, both from the perspective of the outside in the private sector as well as governor, will help us steer through this current pandemic challenge and on to better economic times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell, for that very fine opening statement. And now we turn to our nominee, Governor Raimondo. Your prepared statement will be included in the record as submitted, and we ask you to summarize any comments you might have in 5 minutes. You are recognized.
Chairman, when are the introductions from her home state going to come?
Oh, okay. Well, we have just received a flash notice that there will be introductions from senators from Rhode Island. Did I hear the voice of Senator Jack Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Wicker, and thank you, Ranking Member Cantwell. I've had the privilege of knowing the governor for several years. In fact, since 1971. I was a new second lieutenant, just graduated from West Point. I drove to my family's modest summer cottage in Narragansett, Rhode Island, to check in with my folks before I hit the beach. We lived next door to the Pirro family, wonderful neighbors. Mr. Pirro was a cook in a business club in Providence, Rhode Island. And just before I left, my mother said, "Go next door. Josephine just had a new baby." Josephine was the Pirro's daughter. I weighed the joys of the beach versus the command of my mother, and I quickly went next door. I saw Josephine holding an almost 2-month-old little girl. I said, "She's cute. What's her name?" "Gina," said Josephine Raimondo. Our families summered together year after year, so I saw and heard of the governor's remarkable progress. She attended my high school, LaSalle Academy, where she excelled. By the way, that's also Senator Toomey's high school. She was accepted into Harvard College, where she again excelled. Upon graduation, she was awarded one of the most prestigious scholarships in the world, a Rhodes Scholarship. After graduating from Oxford, she earned her law degree at Yale University. After a clerkship in the Federal District Court, she turned her formidable talents to business. In her finance and investment work, she learned about business and innovation from small startups to large corporations. She will bring that wealth of experience, practical experience, to the Department of Commerce. In 2010, she was elected the General Treasurer of the state of Rhode Island. She took on tough issues and hammered out practical solutions. In 2014, she was elected the first woman to serve as the governor of the state of Rhode Island. She was re-elected in 2018. As governor, she has led with extraordinary distinction. In the wake of the pandemic, she rallied the people of Rhode Island with straight talk and quickly established an outstanding team of physicians and medical experts to guide the state's efforts. She has made bold changes to the economy to improve its direction. Understanding the centrality of education now and the increasing urgency in the future, she created a program of free tuition at the Community College of Rhode Island for low-income Rhode Islanders. She realigned work skills training with the needs of business. She joined Senator Whitehouse and me in helping to modernize Rhode Island's infrastructure and completed the nation's first offshore wind power system. She spurred investment and job creation in our state so that prior to the pandemic, we had a record number of jobs and our lowest unemployment rate in 30 years. Now, I would like to say all of this is the result of meeting me at the formative age of 2 months, but I can't. What I can say about her is she is the proud daughter of working class parents. They served the nation and their community and left an example of hard work and helping to build opportunity for all. As such, Governor Raimondo knows that the true test of a Secretary of Commerce is a flourishing Main Street, not simply a bountiful Wall Street. I can say with complete confidence that the battle in the COVID epidemic, after invigorating our economy. And with a firm commitment to working families like her own, there is no better choice for the Secretary of Commerce at this time than Governor Gina Raimondo. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Reed. I'm told Senator Whitehouse is also lined up to make an opening statement. Sir, are you there?
I am here, Chairman Wicker.
Senator Whitehouse is recognized.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you also to Chairman-to-be Cantwell. I cannot top Senator Jack Reed in the length of my association with Governor Raimondo, back to diapers. But I can assure all of my colleagues, Republican and Democrat alike, that you will like working with Secretary Raimondo. She is smart, she is practical, she is results-oriented, and she likes getting stuff done. As governor of Rhode Island, she focused on the economy, a critical part of the Commerce Secretary's beat. She added record numbers of jobs. The unemployment rate fell to the lowest point in 3 decades. The minimum wage rose 4 times. Protections for low-wage workers improved. New job training programs went into effect, and Rhode Island became particularly a national hub for offshore wind. In solving the offshore wind dilemma, Governor Raimondo broke the logjam of offshore wind siting that had prevented any state in the United States from getting offshore wind turbines up. Now, off of Rhode Island, there is steel in the water and there are electrons on the grid. So Governor Raimondo will be a successful Commerce Secretary on the economy, growing our economy nationally and creating jobs nationally, just as she did in Rhode Island. But I'm just as excited about her role as the new Secretary of what I call Oceans and Commerce. We have seen, and Chairman Wicker has been an important part, as well as Ranking Member Cantwell, enormous bipartisan progress on oceans. There is an open lane on oceans for an energetic and bright secretary to move issues forward in an almost unprecedented way. Our oceans, as many of us who come from coastal states know, are in serious peril from an array of threats. And NOAA has long been overlooked and underfunded. So having an ocean state governor to oversee NOAA's work is something that is very exciting. She has experience and familiarity with the issues around storm surge, sea level rise, ocean plastics, pirate fishing, fisheries management, and many other challenging areas. As governor, she established task forces on plastic waste, developed a collaborative relationship between wind developers and fishermen that saw to the success of our offshore wind programs, focused on coastal resiliency and the need of our coastlines to be defended from inevitable sea level rise and worsened storms. And she focused on our blue economy, which in Rhode Island is an incredibly important part, not only of our financial well-being, but of our heritage as well. Governor Raimondo will be the Secretary for Oceans and Commerce we have long needed. As important as her successes in this area is also what Jack referred to, and that is her grounding and her roots. She recognizes the values that matter most to Rhode Islanders, and I think to people around the country. That if you work hard, you should never have to struggle to feed your family. You should have access to good health care and quality housing. You should be able to live in a safe and clean environment, and you should be able to send your kids to a good, reliable school. Her values will serve Americans very, very well, and I'll end where I began. I am very confident that my colleagues will like working with Secretary Raimondo.
Thank you. And I'm going to put Senator Reed and Senator Whitehouse down as firm yeses on confirmation. And Governor Raimondo, we are delighted to have you remotely, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Cantwell. Special thank you to Senators Reid and Whitehouse for your friendship, support, and such kind opening remarks. Thank you to both of you. It is an honor to come before this committee today as President Biden's nominee for United States Secretary of Commerce. Over the past few weeks, I've enjoyed talking with many of the members. I want to thank you this morning for your time and tell you how much I appreciated hearing your insights and perspectives on the important work of the Commerce Department. The Commerce Department has a simple but vital mission: to spur good-paying jobs, empower entrepreneurs to innovate and grow, and help American workers and businesses compete. These are the same priorities that have guided my own life and my own career. Like most of you, like many of you, I was raised to appreciate the value of hard work and good family supporting jobs. When I was growing up here in Rhode Island was a national epicenter of jewelry manufacturing, and those factories supported thousands of families all across my state. My dad always used to say there was something special about a job in manufacturing, the dignity of a job when you spent your day making things. But by the 1980s, the factories started closing, jobs were shipped overseas, and thousands of working class Rhode Islanders found themselves suddenly out of work. My father was one of those Rhode Islanders. After a long career at the Bulliver Watch Factory, he was forced into early retirement in his 50s, and it was a rough time for my family. And so I know the pain that losing a job can cause a family. And as governor, I've seen that pain in communities all across Rhode Island where people have lost their jobs to offshoring or outsourcing, and more recently in the pandemic. At its heart, the Commerce Department is about opportunity. The opportunity to start or grow a business, the opportunity to get a good, stable job, the opportunity to pursue the American dream, regardless of where you live. I have been blessed in my life to have an opportunity to get a great education that put me on a path to success. I started a venture capital firm to help entrepreneurs start and grow their own businesses. I served as state treasurer to shore up Rhode Island's finances, and for the past 6 years, it has been my great honor to serve the people of Rhode Island as their governor. When I started my campaign for governor, as Senator Reid said, Rhode Island had the highest unemployment rate in the country for 8 straight months in a row. And so we had to get to work to get Rhode Islanders back to work. By the time the pandemic hit, we had the lowest unemployment rate in over 30 years and the most jobs ever in our state's history. We did it by investing in people through workforce training programs, bringing dozens of new businesses to the state, and empowering small business owners. We launched the Real Jobs Rhode Island Training Initiative, which has partnered with 1,800 companies and provided skills to 11,000 Rhode Islanders. And we created the state's first small business loan program, which has empowered hundreds of Rhode Island entrepreneurs so far, more than half of whom are women or people of color. In this time of overlapping crisis, the Commerce Department must be a partner to businesses and workers to help them innovate and grow. First, we need to immediately address the economic damage caused by the pandemic. COVID has touched every community, urban, rural, suburban, tribal, and exacerbated the long-standing inequities facing low-income families. Second, we need to ensure that American workers and manufacturers can compete fairly on the global playing field. We need to invest in innovation and technology in our manufacturing sector and take aggressive trade enforcement actions to combat unfair trade practices from China and other nations that undercut American manufacturing. And third, we need to recognize that tackling climate change is a pressing priority, but goes hand in hand with creating good-paying jobs. None of this will be possible without the incredible hardworking public servants at the Department of Commerce. And I am excited to lead that team, a team with experienced, dedicated public servants at the Commerce Department, some of the brightest minds and very best scientists in America. If I am confirmed, it will be an honor to learn from them and lead them. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very, very much, Governor. And we will now proceed to questions under the 5-minute rule. I am required to ask you this question. The committee has a history of the chair asking nominees to state on the record that they pledge to work with Congress and the committee in a cooperative manner. So I ask you, if confirmed, will you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee and provide thorough and timely responses to our requests for information as we work together to address important policy issues? Will you?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's move on then to some specific issues. I wonder if you've had a chance to look at the status of United States and European Union negotiations to establish a successor data transfer framework that overcomes the issues that led to the invalidation of the Privacy Shield last summer. We held a hearing on this in the last Congress on the invalidation of this EU-US Privacy Shield framework. If confirmed, how do you plan to work with your counterparts in Europe on this issue and other issues to ensure that we have a data transfer framework that is workable? And how will you continue transatlantic data transfers in compliance with what we have now? Have you had a chance to look into this, Governor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you say, cross-border data transfers are vital to the interest of many American companies, and the Privacy Shield was particularly important for thousands of small and medium-sized businesses. As I understand it, the negotiations are going well, and should I be confirmed, it would be a top priority of mine to finish the negotiations swiftly and ensure that there's a successor agreement that protects the interest of American businesses and provides for that transfer of data.
Well, thank you very much. And I just wanted to highlight the importance of that by asking that as my first substantive question. Let's move to seafood, trade, restaurants, and competitiveness. Americans eat approximately 70% of their seafood in restaurants and other food service establishments. Restaurant closures during the COVID-19 crisis caused the demand for seafood to evaporate almost overnight. As a result, fisheries across the nation have reported up to a 90% drop in sales in 2020. My Restaurants Act, which is a bipartisan act, would have temporarily established and provided funding for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Since Americans eat 70% of their seafood in restaurants, this bill would also help the seafood industry recover. And at this point, I offer into the record at this point an op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal, Closing Time for Bars and Restaurants, by Robert St. John, a prominent restaurateur in the state of Mississippi. And without objection, it will be added into the record at this point. So let me ask you, Governor, since 70% of Americans eat their seafood in restaurants, from the perspective of your region, what do you expect to be the lasting impacts of this terrible crisis on the seafood industry? And what will it take for the seafood and the restaurant industry to recover?
Thank you for that question. I know from our previous discussions, this is a very important topic for you, as it is for me. As Senator Whitehouse said, I am the governor of the ocean state. Thousands of Rhode Islanders make their living as commercial fishermen, and both they and restaurants have been really devastated during this pandemic. If confirmed as Commerce Secretary, I would look forward to working very closely with you and your colleagues to come up with bold and creative solutions, not only to help our fishermen, but also our restaurants, and for that matter, the entire hospitality industry, because I assess the impacts to be quite longstanding unless we take bold action.
These are two terribly threatened industries that are vital to our economy. Thank you, Governor Raimondo. Senator Cantwell, for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, again, congratulations on your nomination. And I think you're aware of how broad the committee is in it, the department is in its oversight of science issues. So I wanted to, the chairman asked you a pretty broad question at the beginning, which was important to do with collaboration. It's surprising how often that doesn't happen sometimes, so it's very good to clarify. But also want to clarify this issue as it relates to science and data. Do you oppose any censorship of scientific data and information coming out of the Department of Commerce?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And will you work with us to help restore the confidence in that science and data information and investment in it for the future?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. A couple of specific issues. One that I mentioned in my opening statement, and as we're talking about seafood and the fishing economy, salmon is particularly important to the Pacific Northwest. And one of the issues regarding salmon that I think, as we talk about infrastructure investment moving forward, that is all sorts of transportation infrastructure, we're a coastal state with a lot of transportation infrastructure and moving of products, but keeping salmon habitat and restoration in a robust state is very critical to keeping salmon. So will you work with us on a more targeted, larger scale investment in stormwater restoration and in building critical habitat for everything from oyster reefs to eel and seagrass and critical habitat? I'm sure this is, again, I think there's a dozen or so members of this committee that probably have similar problems in their states, but would you work with us to increase the amount of investment and targeted return from that investment?
Yes, I would very much look forward to working with you and other members of the committee. Again, as I said, I have come to understand from my discussions with you these past couple of weeks how important the salmon stock is and the fishing industry in general is to your state, and I would absolutely look forward to working with you on that issue.
Well, I guess I would call it salmon infrastructure. And that is that as we grow transportation infrastructure, which we also desperately need in the Pacific Northwest, we grow salmon infrastructure, which is that habitat and stormwater restoration, which practically every community in my state would tell you that they need if we're going to do a better job of protecting salmon. The same kind of scientific and data information is also needed for our orca whale population and preserving them. So one of the things that they have issue with right now, which NOAA has basically said we need to do something about noise as it relates to the orca population. So I hope that you will work with us to implement something that is a process for our shipping and Coast Guard and others to work on a mitigation plan for the orca whale population.
Yes, I would be excited to do that. I will say here as governor, I have a record of investing in stormwater, investing in resiliency, investing in adaptation, and would certainly look forward to doing that with you and members of the committee.
Thank you. And then lastly, stock assessments. We believe in good fisheries management policy, and key to that is stock assessments. And so I hope you'll work with us on increasing the amount of dollars that go into the science behind stock assessments so we can make good management plans.
Yes, again, absolutely. I plan to lead with science and lead with data. I know stock assessments are vital and also very detailed, and I absolutely will look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you. Thank you. And on the larger issue of science and data, as I mentioned in my opening statement, as it relates to weather, do you think the United States should be a world leader in weather and data forecasting information? I say, I'm not necessarily trying to be competitive with another nation. It's just the amount of times that we hear, our news broadcasters say, well, this is the forecast, and then this is the European forecast. And they are using supercomputing time to get more out of this. This weather data is so critical for us as it relates to, as I said, aviation, maritime, space issues, agriculture issues. So will you work with us to make sure the United States has the state-of-the-art technology when it comes to weather forecasting and weather information?
Yes, I think, and we had the opportunity to visit about this last week. I applaud your leadership on it. I think that America's National Weather Service should be the gold standard. And should I be confirmed, I will work with you to make sure that that is the case.
Thank you. I see my time's expired, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that I'm going to count on the governor to work with us. Her workforce strategy in real Rhode Island jobs, I think is, that particularly for underserved communities and minority business communities, something we need to look at and how we can elevate that to a national level. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Senator Thune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Raimondo, congratulations on your nomination. And let me just start by saying that, as I'm sure you are aware, in December, Congress allocated funds to NTIA to oversee a broadband grant program to connect underserved areas. It is vitally important that we close the digital divide in states like South Dakota and across America. However, the effectiveness of NTIA administering such a program is concerning given its history awarding broadband grants provided by the 2009 stimulus. Under the Obama-Biden administration, GAO concluded that NTIA had faced a number of challenges from staffing to adequate data on broadband availability, resulting in a largely ineffective program at the taxpayer's expense. What steps would you take to correct the mistakes of the past, and will you commit to me that NTIA will set up this program in a way that this new money only goes to areas that are completely unserved?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. First, let me say that as a governor of a state and having led through COVID, I have seen the truly devastating effects of that lack of broadband can have on people. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how children can have their classes. It's how people can do telehealth and visit a doctor. It's how you can sign up to get a vaccine. So you have my strong commitment to work closely with you and other members of this committee to make sure that NTIA has strong leadership, that we execute on those grants as expeditiously as possible, and with an eye towards making sure that everyone, tribal lands, rural, folks who live in a mountain range, has access to broadband, which is absolutely necessary. I will also say, this is an area where I hope we can have bipartisan agreement. I have heard from my Republican governor colleagues and Democratic governor colleagues all over the country saying, we need help on this. And so should I have the honor of serving as Commerce Secretary, I commit this will be a very top priority the minute I get into the job.
Thank you. Congress established a clear division of responsibility for spectrum management. The FCC is responsible for commercial spectrum, NTIA is responsible for federal government spectrum, and there have been a number of instances in the past when the FCC and NTIA's roles have come into conflict. How can we ensure that the FCC and NTIA work in partnership to address spectrum management issues that impact both federal and commercial entities? And do you support freeing up additional spectrum held by the federal government to support the needs of next generation wireless services?
Thank you for this question, and it's a topic that I have the opportunity to talk to a number of members of the committee on. Again, it gets back to having a strong NTIA with strong leadership, particularly as it relates to 5G. The race is on for 5G, and I want America to win and lead, and that requires spectrum. So yes, I do support finding additional publicly owned spectrum. And I think what we need to do, and the president has been clear, is we need to step back and have a national strategy on spectrum and look to make spectrum available from public and commercial uses so that we can move forward on broadband and 5G. And I commit to working with you on that and having leadership in the NTIA to do that.
Thank you. The livelihoods of farmers and ranchers in my state often depend on forecasting accuracy, so it's important that we find innovative ways to improve NOAA's capabilities when it comes to predicting weather. In last Congress, Senator Schatz and I introduced a bill called the Learning Excellence and Good Examples from New Developers, or LEGEND Act, got to have an acronym around here, which makes NOAA's current and future operational forecast models more accessible to outside experts, including scientists and engineers and academia, who can provide new insights to improve existing forecasting models. Do you believe it is important for NOAA to incorporate innovative approaches to weather forecasting from outside stakeholders?
Yes, I do. As I said to Senator Cantwell, the National Weather Service should be the gold standard. And by the way, I have a strong track record of embracing innovation and technology throughout my public and private sector career. So yes, I think we ought to be forward-leaning and embrace science and technology and innovation so we have the best there is to offer.
And would you commit to working with us to move that act through Congress, that legislation?
I will commit to working with you, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Thune. Governor, let me just interject that Senator Thune has raised a very good point with regard to NTIA and FCC, and it is going to be important that we have a secretary that is committed to following the statute on the bifurcated system of managing spectrum with the NTIA representing the spectrum needs of federal agencies. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Governor. Thank you for being here. And I have to say that those two introductions by your senators, we hear a lot of introductions, but they were incredibly heartfelt and a tribute to you. And I would also add that my own governor, Tim Walz, is a big fan of yours, and that goes a long way. So your experience with economic development, your private sector and public sector experience, I think it's going to be an amazing combination for this job. So thank you very much for being willing to serve. I had a question. You and I talked about this when we met on travel and tourism, and I noted that Senator Blunt and I, along with several other senators, including Schatz, Cortez Masto, have worked on tourism. And the Brand USA bill, where Senator Blunt and I have led for years now, is a public-private partnership that promotes international tourism throughout the U.S., supporting more than 51,000 jobs a year. And I just like your commitment that you will support that and do all that you can to continue to support the tourism industry.
Yes, thank you, Senator, and thank you for your time yesterday. And thank you for your leadership on tourism. I know you've been a leader on this issue for a long time. I hail from a state where tourism is a significant part of our economy, and I have seen firsthand over these past 10 months just how crippling the COVID pandemic has been to the businesses of tourism-dependent businesses. So yes, I look forward to working with you and your colleagues, really leaning into Brand USA and being as bold and creative as we can to encourage people to come to our country, to fly, to stay in hotels. Obviously, I think President Biden's leadership around COVID is vital, and once folks are vaccinated and feel more comfortable, absolutely, we will work together on this issue. It's a lot of American jobs.
Thank you. And one thing we didn't talk about as much, and I wish I had, and I can talk to you about it later, and given your experience with venture capital investment and the like, I think you could be such a big advocate for this, is that a bill that I have called the New Business Preservation Act focuses, we worked with Steve Case and other people on this, focuses on incubating and developing Silicon Valley type areas all over the country, that it shouldn't just be one area that gets all this investment, as good as that is, and that we need to spread it around and create other hubs of investment. And what the bill does is it authorizes states to make equity investments in new businesses alongside venture capital companies. They wouldn't actually be making the decisions or funding it directly. But I hope you'll be willing to look at that and look at that as well as skills investment. I think your experience in Rhode Island and what the work you've done with getting more people jobs would be really helpful. I think it was Tyler Perry who once said, your beginnings shouldn't dictate your destiny. And certainly after this pandemic and through this pandemic, we're going to have a lot of work that must be done. I know Senator Cantwell has been such a leader on this, on skills reinvestment, as well as looking at our economy more globally about where we can invest in areas of the country to encourage more hubs of innovation.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, of course, I will look forward to working with you and all of your colleagues. I would say I am deeply committed to making sure that all Americans in every community have an opportunity to have the skills they need to get a good job. And it is true that most venture capital is highly concentrated in 5 or 6 communities around America, but those communities don't corner the market on great ideas or entrepreneurs. And so I will very much look forward to working with you to provide opportunity to all Americans.
Thank you. Last question. With 95% of the world's potential customers living outside of our borders, it's important more than ever that we ensure that our businesses and farmers, as reference to Senator Thune, we share a border, are able to capitalize on opportunities in these markets. And I'm a strong supporter of the U.S. Commercial Service, which, as you know, is the export division of the Department's International Trade Administration, which handles trade promotion, has trade professionals in over 100 U.S. cities, including my own, and has a presence in more than 70 countries. And during the Obama administration, there was a lot of focus on this. And I think we need to do even more as we move forward on exports. What's your plans to improve the U.S. Commercial Service Program, particularly for businesses based in rural areas?
So first, I agree with you. Secondly, I know this is an important area for you, and I appreciate your leadership. Exports equal growth, equal more jobs. So I intend to be very aggressive, should I be confirmed, to make sure that the Department of Commerce is accessible to all businesses, particularly small, medium-sized businesses, farmers, rurally located businesses. They ought to have access to the tools in the Department of Commerce to help them improve their exports. And so I will be very focused on that.
Very good. And I'll put on the record, Mr. Chairman, questions about broadband as well as steel dumping, something I discussed with the governor yesterday. So
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Chairman. Governor, I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to visit yet, but look forward to an opportunity to do that. Let's go right to the exports issue that you and Senator Klobuchar just talked about. I think one of the disadvantages we've created for ourselves in the recent years are tariffs on a number of things, but particularly steel and aluminum. In my state, we make beer cans and bass boats and automobiles and pickup trucks, and I think we're disadvantaged,
Excuse me, Senator,
frankly.
don't you also make airplanes?
And airplanes, exactly, and even Boeing airplanes, as a matter of fact.
Don't take that out of his
Senator
time.
Cantwell. But all of those things, and well beyond, as Senator Cantwell just pointed out, well beyond any list I would come up with. President Biden said he would conduct a review of all existing tariffs. I'm personally concerned about the 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum, and wonder if you have any view on that issue.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I will say that here in Rhode Island, we make submarines and electric boat who are consumers of steel and aluminum. And so I hear you and I appreciate your advocacy. Having said that, China has clearly behaved in ways that are anti-competitive, dumping cheap steel and aluminum into America, which hurts American workers and hurts the ability of our companies to compete. So should I be confirmed, I plan to be very aggressive to help Americans compete against the unfair practices of China. I will say the president has been clear. We need to step back, review broadly our policies, trade policies as it relates to China, consult with our allies, and I will assure you that I will certainly listen to you, engage stakeholders, listen to the manufacturers in your state, and take their needs into account. I also understand there's an exclusions process, and I will also commit to you for consuming industries, and I will commit to you to ensure that that exclusions process is swift, fair, objective, and helps to balance the competing interests.
Well, I do think, and I'm sure you well understand that the dumping, the tariffs that are based on that are clearly tariffs that we should impose, and we shouldn't tolerate dumping. At the same time, we shouldn't use national security as just an excuse to have a tariff, and you're not suggesting we should, but anything you do on that front doesn't take away the tools you have from a country like China that may be dumping steel and aluminum, and I hope you'll look at that way. I was going to mention Brand USA, and Senator Klobuchar and I mentioned we have worked closely on that for a long time. It's a program that is working, was working obviously a lot better when people were traveling, but to be sure that we're continuing to project states like Minnesota and Missouri and Rhode Island that may not have their own budget that would allow them to appeal to foreign travelers the way Brand USA has. It's working. It's a great partnership. I think we've gone through all of the challenges of a new program and see that program working a little better all the time. And you've already addressed that. Generally, the hospitality industry, travel, tourism, hospitality has been hurt as badly as any industry in this pandemic. And being sure when we establish barriers, like some concern right now that maybe everybody who'd travel to the United States should have had a vaccine or have some level of testing. I hope we really move forward looking at those issues with an understanding of how important that is to our economy. We clearly want to win the fight against the virus, but we don't want to lose the fight for a reemerging economy in those areas. Have you had any thoughts on whether there should be barriers on travel that the Commerce Department would be involved in?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I would say this is something that I have lived every day since COVID, because being governor, you're in the position of wanting to protect people from COVID, but also make sure that you maintain as much of an economy as possible. The President Biden has a fantastic team leading on COVID, and I have confidence in their ability to do that. I will simply say to you, I hear you, and I feel we need to be very bold, aggressive, and creative to help the tourism and hospitality industry in light of the situation they're in.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Chairman. I may have some questions for the record, but I've used up my time.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee, and thank you for your willingness to continue your public service, Governor. I am really admiring and grateful of your record on environmental preservation, particularly your commitment, as you and I discussed, to the idea of a Blue New Deal. I think a phrase originated by Senator Warren, but as the ocean state and our neighbor to Connecticut, I know that you're committed to our oceans and to the health of that treasure that we share. And in that connection, I was very gratified to see that President Biden has signed an executive order to reinstate the protections afforded by the Northeast canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument last week. That's a cause that I championed. President Obama signed the order establishing it. President Trump reversed it, and now, fortunately, President Biden has reinstated it. And I understand that he is contemplating and will soon sign an executive order to establish a goal to conserve 30% of all United States lands, freshwaters, and oceans by 2030, which is known as 30 by 30. Thank you for your support of that measure as well. As you know, the quotas for fishing in our respective waters are outdated, and I would like your commitment that you'll be working with me to get the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission and relevant fishery managers to update the outdated quotas for fishing, which affects the fishing industry in our respective states. As you know, those quotas have been severely outdated for years, and they force many of our boats to throw back fish that are dead anyway, and the quotas should be updated to enable them to keep some of that produce.
Thank you. And I know this is a vitally important area for you. You've brought it up with me a few times, and I definitely look forward to working with you on this. I will say that I understand, again, being the governor of the ocean state, 4,000 or 5,000 people make a living fishing here. Having quotas, stock assessments, accurate based on data, science, is important, and that's I'll prioritize it. That's how I'll lead, and I look forward to a dialogue with you on this.
Thank you. I know as you're, in light of your background, both in the private sector and now as governor, you're very well aware of the disparate impact the pandemic has had on minority-owned businesses. In fact, according to one report released by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, 41% of Black-owned businesses, 32% of Latinx-owned businesses have gone under. What would be the role, what should be the role of the Minority Business Development Agency to help vulnerable and hopefully thriving minority-owned businesses?
Yes, thank you. COVID has shined a light on the inequities in our economy, and the president has been very clear, we're going to build back better and more equitably, and I strongly support that. I believe MBDA can play a vital role in that. Certainly, I have a lot of experience as governor in place-based economic development. I'm very proud of the fact that more than half of the people who have participated in our job training and placement effort post-COVID are women and people of color. So you have my commitment to lead in this area and to use the MBTA as a very important player in the rebuild effort.
Thank you. Finally, let me ask you about broadband connectivity. As you know, many parts of our country, including Rhode Island and Connecticut, are afflicted with the homework gap. The lack of connectivity is a severe barrier to young people trying to stay current, and that's another problem that's been highlighted by the pandemic. The census's ACS program is one of the most reliable source of information about the homework gap, and I would appreciate your commitment that you will make as a priority the sources of information about the homework gap and the digital divide, which are so necessary to our closing that gap.
Yes, I will commit to prioritizing that and working with you on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Governor. It's a pleasure to see you here today, and I appreciated you taking time earlier to have a conversation with me. So it's an important job that you've put your name forward to take on. And again, I thank you for your willingness to serve. I'm interested in talking more with you on technology and competitiveness. Just yesterday, the Center for Data Innovation report assessed our country's artificial intelligence capabilities as being in a dead heat with China's. At the end of 2020, two bills that I led to advance U.S. policy on the Internet of Things and emerging technology both passed into law. The first is the DIGIT Act, which I worked on with Senator Schatz to ensure that the U.S. remains competitive on the development and deployment of IoT. This could add considerable value to our economy, especially in transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and also energy sectors. The bill, now law, directs the Secretary of Commerce to convene a public-private working group and a steering committee. If confirmed as Secretary, will you prioritize implementing the DIGIT Act's working group structures in accordance with that law?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your time the other day. I enjoyed the discussion. The answer is yes, I will look forward to working with you on that. Whether it's artificial intelligence or 5G or blockchain, we are in competition, and it'll be my job, should I be confirmed, to make sure that Americans can compete and get those jobs. And so convening that sort of a group would be absolutely a priority for me, working with you.
Great. Secondly, I led the Senate companion to the American Compete Act with Senator Sinema. The legislation directs the Commerce Department to complete a series of studies on emerging technologies. These studies will inform Congress on key sectors of emerging tech, which have major consequences for our country's economic success. The Secretary of Commerce plays an important part in conducting those studies in the Compete Act. Will you commit to ensuring that, if confirmed, the Secretary's office will take a lead role in fulfilling this responsibility?
Thank you, Senator, for that. And yes, I will commit to working with you on that, focusing on that, and prioritizing it.
Thank you. During our call last week, we talked about how NOAA works closely with the University of Nebraska on two important programs, the High Plains Regional Climate Center and the National Drought Mitigation Center. Both of these programs provide important information on the climate across the country. If confirmed, will you work with me to ensure that NOAA continues to support and coordinate with UNL on these programs?
So thank you for bringing that up again. I know this is a priority of yours because you brought it up with me before, and I would look forward to working with you. I will say here in my home state, NOAA has a significant presence and also works with our University of Rhode Island to great effect and to create innovation and jobs. So I will look forward to supporting you on that.
Great. I appreciated speaking with you about the Commerce Department's recent actions against threats from China before this hearing. Would you further explain your perspective on the national security risks regarding the Chinese equipment suppliers to our communication networks, particularly with regard to Huawei?
Yes, thank you. So national security has to come first, obviously. And with respect to 5G, as we spoke about in your office, there's an opportunity to move forward in 5G and create great innovation and jobs. But we can't have the Chinese or really anyone having a backdoor into our network and compromising in any way our national or economic security. And so as Commerce Secretary, should I be confirmed, I will use the full toolkit at my disposal to the fullest extent possible to protect Americans and our network from Chinese interference or any kind of backdoor influence into our network. And that's Huawei, ZTE, or any other company.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your strong firmness on this issue because it is a national security issue. We need, I think, to have a strong voice when we discuss these issues, and we need to follow up with strength as well. So I thank you for that firmness and look forward to working with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Schatz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Governor, thank you for the conversation yesterday. You mentioned in your testimony that Commerce has the tools and expertise to help communities and businesses address climate risk. Can you just talk about your top 2 or 3 priorities under existing statute?
Thank you and good morning. There are a number of ways that Commerce could influence climate, but most principally through NOAA. As I said, some of the best scientists around atmospherics and oceans are at NOAA and are at the department. So I would really look forward primarily through NOAA to address the climate issues posed by warming oceans, ocean debris, rising tides, the issues around fisheries and climate, to lead again with science and rely on the experts in the department. I think there's a very big role for NOAA to play in the blue economy, but also as we meet the challenges of climate.
Great, and I just encourage you, especially given what happened with the previous regime, to lock in to whatever extent possible a scientific integrity policy which doesn't swing back and forth depending on who the president may be. I want to pivot to the census, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I think it's important for the record. Are you going to give the Census Bureau adequate time to compile and review apportionment and redistricting data?
Yes, I, like you, I know from yesterday's conversation, I believe that we need to take the politics out of the census and we need to rely on the experts. The experts and statisticians in the Census Bureau are top-notch. So I, once confirmed, intend to rely on them. And if they advise that more time is necessary, then I'm going to follow the lead of their expertise.
Thank you. We briefly spoke yesterday about the potential for aquaculture. I know your home state has a growing aquaculture industry, and Senator Wicker and I have legislation along those lines. As Secretary, will you work with Senator Wicker and myself and other members of the committee to enact and implement bipartisan legislation to develop a responsible national aquaculture framework?
I would embrace that opportunity to work with you and your other colleagues. We here have used aquaculture successfully for oysters. I know there are different issues as it relates to finfish, but yes, I would look forward to working with you.
Great. And you talked a little bit about place-based economic development. Senator Thune and I authored, and it was signed into law, a law called the Native Act, which was bipartisan, and it is designed to strengthen native tourism and empower local communities to tell their own story. You know, Brand USA is important, destination marketing is important, but a lot of the best opportunities for economic development are for small towns and cities and tribes and native communities to tell their own story, and increasingly, that's what tourists want. The unfortunate fact is that even though the bill was enacted, it was never implemented by the previous Commerce Department Secretary. And I would like your commitment simply to implement the law and to consult with us as we go along.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And finally, as you know, Congress allocated $1 billion to NTIA to fund broadband on tribal lands. Do you commit to establishing a fast and fair review process so that this money can be immediately deployed to help unconnected students and individuals during this pandemic?
I commit to you and all of your colleagues, because a number of you have brought it up, to move that as expeditiously, transparently, and effectively as possible. I do believe that broadband is a life-saving, and too many people living in rural and tribal lands don't have it. So yes, I will I will prioritize it and get going quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, congratulations on your nomination. Welcome. In recent years, the United States has successfully used economic pressure to prevent the People's Republic of China from exploiting American technology to carry out human rights abuses. This is an area the previous administration was particularly active in. Governor, should you be confirmed, can you please describe the role you envision for the Department of Commerce in these efforts, especially as that role relates to export and import controls?
Yes, thank you. So as I said earlier, China's actions have been anti-competitive, hurtful to American workers and businesses, coercive, and as you point out, they're culpable for atrocious human rights abuses. So whether it's the entities list or tariffs or countervailing duties, I intend to use all those tools to the fullest extent possible to level the playing field for the American worker. I believe in free trade, but fair trade. Americans can compete if the rules are fair and the playing field is level. And I believe my job, should I be confirmed, is to increase the competitiveness for the American worker and companies, especially small businesses. President Biden has said that we're going to step back and have a whole of government approach as it relates to the threat of China. And of course, I will play my role on that team.
Well, as you noted, the Department of Commerce maintains the entity list, which is foreign parties that engage in activities contrary to U.S. national security. And in 2019, I led an effort to add to that list companies the Chinese Communist Party has used to carry out their surveillance campaigns of Uyghurs and other oppressive activities. And I introduced legislation mandating that some of those companies be listed, the Tiananmen Act. And in the fall of 2019 and in 2020, the Trump administration did so, adding batches of Chinese technology companies to the entities list. Can you commit, if confirmed, that those companies will remain on the BIS entities list?
I will commit to working with you on that, and I certainly agree with you that the entities list is a powerful tool in the Commerce Secretary's toolkit to shore up American national security.
Well, let me ask about Huawei in particular. Can you commit that Huawei will remain on the list?
I will commit that once, should I be confirmed and I am there, I will review the policy, consult with you, consult with industry, consult with our allies, and make an assessment as to what's best for American national and economic security.
Well, I will say there's chatter in Washington that the Biden administration is contemplating going easy on China and removing companies from the entities list. I certainly hope that does not happen, because I think that would be profoundly contrary to the national security interest of the United States. The Department of Commerce's mandate and its mission is to create conditions for economic growth and opportunity. The Department of Commerce's job is to advocate for commerce, to advocate for jobs. I will say I am certainly concerned that in the Biden administration, the Commerce Department will not have that as its priority. President Biden has named you as a member of the interagency working group on the social cost of greenhouse gases. In what federal statute does the Department of Commerce find legal authority to promulgate rules concerning greenhouse gases?
That is a question I am not certain of, but I will tell you that if President Biden asks me to serve on his team in a capacity to help American workers compete or to fight climate change, then I obviously will be a key player on that team.
So, Governor, your current job as governor of Rhode Island, as you know, in 2019, CNBC did its annual rankings of the states that are friendly to business, and the state of Rhode Island came out 50th, dead last, the worst state in the union for businesses. Given that record, how are the American people, what reassurances can you give the American people that your performance at Commerce would be better than the state of Rhode Island has done in terms of creating an environment where jobs are plentiful?
When I ran for governor, Rhode Island had the highest unemployment rate in the country. And just prior to COVID, we had the lowest unemployment rate in our state's history and the most jobs in our state's history. When I ran, we were 50 out of 50 on Business Insider's ranking. And a couple years into my term, we were 26th. So my record is clear that we have created thousands of jobs for the people of Rhode Island. And I would look forward to fighting for the American worker should I be confirmed.
Okay, and final question, should you be confirmed? Last week, President Biden signed an executive order canceling the Keystone Pipeline, destroying 11,000 jobs, including 8,000 union jobs. If you were confirmed as Secretary of Commerce, what would you say to those 11,000 construction workers whose jobs have been destroyed by the stroke of a pen, and what would you say to them?
I would say we're going to get you to work. I would say that climate change is a threat to all of us, and that we will make sure that you have jobs, that you have the skills you need to have a job. And by the way, as we meet the needs of climate change, there will be many more jobs created, good paying jobs, union jobs. And should I be the Commerce Secretary, I will fight every single day for every American to have a decent paying job and a chance to compete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Markey, we have heard an awful lot from New England already today. Would you like to just yield back your time?
Well, this is it's a great day, Mr. Chairman. The Bay State and the Ocean State, we agree on a lot of issues, and we're small in numbers, but we're mighty on policies. And Governor Raimondo is a perfect example of someone who is just an incredible leader on issues that make her state a cutting edge in just so many areas. And I'd like to, if I could, begin, Governor, by taking two subjects I usually raise in committees with Senator Wicker, and that's telecommunications and climate change. And we're going to need programs, and I'm going to be introducing legislation towards this effect in order to protect our telecommunications networks, our fiber optic networks, and harden them against the impact of climate change. So I'm asking you whether or not you would work with me towards the goal of putting together the programs that will help to ensure that that infrastructure gets protected from the inevitability of the climate change that is already built into our atmosphere.
It would be my honor to work with you. I have long admired your leadership in this area. And yes, I would look forward to that.
Thank you. In the most recent relief bill, the one that we passed right at the end of 2020, we were able to include $300 million for relief for the fishing industry, something that you are very familiar with. So I would love to hear your views on how quickly, expeditiously that funding can get out into the hands of the fishing industry in all of its various manifestations.
Thank you, Senator. I know you're very committed to the fishermen in your state. We have talked about it. And like you, I come from a state with thousands of fishermen. Should I be confirmed, I will assess that very quickly and make sure that it is distributed as expeditiously as possible. The fishermen are struggling like so many others right now, and we need to do our best to get the money out the door quickly and effectively and transparently.
Thank you. And NOAA is just such a critical agency in terms of protecting our country against the impact of climate change. And I have a number of pieces of legislation, one with Senator Sullivan, the Ocean Research Act, to designate funding for critical research on ocean acidification. I have a climate change education act so that NOAA could study and dispense grants on key climate, health, and jobs-related issues. So would you, if confirmed, would you work with me on those issues on climate, health, and marine science priorities?
Yes, I would look forward to working with you.
No, thank you. Much appreciated. And the nation's first federal fisheries lab was established at Woods Hole, Massachusetts in 1871, 150 years ago. The Northeast Fisheries Science Center is an invaluable part of Massachusetts fishery and science community. So Governor, would you commit that NOAA Northeast Fisheries Science Center will remain in Massachusetts?
Senator, I deeply admire your advocacy on this issue. I think you've brought it up with me every time we've spoken. And should I be confirmed, I will commit to look into that and work with you on it.
Well, no, I thank you for that. And again, I would like to ask you to come and visit at Woods Hole so that we can show you the incredible work that is being done right there on all these fishery issues as well. And I'd also ask you, Governor, if you would consider adding additional NOAA facilities and capacity in New Bedford and in other areas of Massachusetts in order to provide the on-the-ground expertise on fishing, offshore wind, and other issues important to Massachusetts communities.
I would look forward to coming to Woods Hole and to New Bedford and exploring that with you.
No, and I appreciate that very much. Obviously, our workers, our fishermen have been under enormous stress over this past year and before. And so I look forward to working with you. I think you're going to be a great Secretary of Commerce. You bring just an incredible background that has prepared you for this moment in our country's history. So I thank you for your service to Rhode Island, but to our country in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Moran.
Chairman Wicker, thank you. Governor Raimondo, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for the conversation we've had recently. Let me start with an issue for me as an appropriator. As we discussed yesterday, I chair the subcommittee on appropriations that funds the Department of Commerce. We raised with you yesterday, and I want to do so again today, a couple of large mission, critical, high-cost items within the Department of Commerce's budget. Two of the department's largest bureaus, NOAA and NIST, are both facing crises as it relates to recapitalizing aging and, in some cases, obsolete infrastructure. I recently visited the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center, where I learned about the need to recapitalize the agency's fleet of Hurricane Hunter aircraft, an effort that will require more than $600 million in funding before 2024. Likewise, earlier this year, I visited the NIST campus in Boulder, Colorado, and the laboratories clearly are aging, and they are housing some of our nation's most premier scientists tasked with some of our country's most challenging issues in science and technology. So, unfortunately, the funding crisis for these capital costs are often not included in the department's budget or in those agencies' budgets request. It's difficult to take things out of everyday operations and put them into things that are necessary for long-term benefits. But I would ask you, if you will, include and prioritize in the department's budget request that we will see later this year and commit to testifying before our subcommittee in regard to these and the other appropriation items.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for bringing this up as you did yesterday. So first, let me say I certainly concur that some of the finest scientists and mathematicians in America are at NIST and at the department, and they do deserve adequate facilities. And I will commit to looking into this and learning more, and certainly coming back to you should I be confirmed.
Governor, thank you. I raised also with you in our conversation something I wanted to raise again because I don't know that it will be mentioned by anyone else And I wouldn't expect you to be terribly knowledgeable about this topic, but it's a topic of fertilizer, phosphate fertilizer that farmers use to grow crops. It's the second most important fertilizer behind nitrogen. And on February 8th, just a few days from now, Commerce is scheduled to make a final determination on countervailing duties on phosphate fertilizers from Morocco, which is one of our nation's largest suppliers. Since the CVD investigation began, the price for those fertilizers in the United States has increased approximately 25%. The higher prices are being passed on to farmers, increasing their input costs, and it comes at an always challenging time for farmers and ultimately comes at a very challenging time for consumers. Governor, I need to highlight this issue and hope that in making a final determination on those duties on phosphate fertilizers, you will assure me that you will take into account the broad impact of those duties that they have on the agricultural economy, on input costs, and on the consumer. And I would ask you to consult. I have a conversation with nominee Governor Vilsack, Secretary Vilsack, to have this conversation as well. And I'm going to encourage him to visit with you about this issue before February the 8th. I need some reassurance that you understand the magnitude and challenge of this issue for everyday farmers and ranchers in this country.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. I know your passion for this, and I appreciate your advocacy on behalf of your constituents. Yes, as with all countervailing duties and tariffs, I understand the pain that some of these decisions can cause to farmers in your state, and I absolutely look forward to working with you and Secretary Vilsack. I look forward to a strong relationship with him generally as it relates to all export policies for agriculture and farmers and imports.
Two other items that I was intended to bring up or have been brought up by others. I would highlight them again for you. The Privacy Shield also has a consequence for data privacy that Senator Blumenthal and I in particular have worked on. And also Senator Blunt raised this morning the issue of 232 tariffs. And I appreciate the conversation we had on those. Finally, I would say, Governor, you have prioritized everyone's request for things that you prioritize. And so I would finally ask you, will you prioritize my request over the priorities of other members of this committee?
Don't thank him for that question.
That's probably one commitment I surely cannot make.
Senator Baldwin is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Raimondo, as we discussed last week, I hold our federal research mission in the highest regard. I think I shared that my grandfather who raised me was an NIH-funded researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. As Commerce Secretary, you will enforce the Bayh-Dole Act, which dictates how technology developed with federal research dollars can be transferred to the private sector. Bayh-Dole retains some rights over new inventions for the federal government in order to protect the public interest. It also includes a requirement that these cutting-edge inventions be manufactured in the United States. At the very end of the Trump administration, NIST proposed a new rule that would prohibit the federal government from reasserting its ownership rights over an invention if a private company is charging too much. In the middle of a pandemic and a recession, it doesn't seem like the right time for us to limit the government's ability to make products Americans need more affordable. So in fact, I believe that innovations that are paid for by the American taxpayer should be used to improve the lives of the American people. Governor, will you work with me to amend or change this rule so we can create jobs and provide Americans affordable access to new cutting-edge products?
Thank you, Senator, for bringing that up, as you did the other day. And yes, I will commit to working with you. I will also say that in my time in the private sector as a venture capitalist, we worked extensively with universities around tech transfer. And so I do have some familiarity with the power of how many jobs you can create if you harness that sort of technology. And NIST is, a leader in that.
Thank you. The Department of Commerce also has the opportunity to play an important role in ensuring that our nation's infrastructure is more resilient to the effects of climate change and extreme weather events. In Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest, that means infrastructure that can withstand severe flooding that is occurring with increased regularity. My bipartisan Built to Last Act would help ensure federal, state, and local and private infrastructure is more resilient by equipping those who develop building codes with the best available climate information and technical assistance if needed. The bill includes directives for NOAA and NIST, and it could be carried out by executive action. So, Governor, if confirmed, do I have your commitment to supporting climate resilient infrastructure, including efforts like those in my bipartisan Built to Last Act?
Thank you. I look forward to learning more about what is in the bill specifically. But certainly I understand, again, I'm governor of a coastal state. We are uniquely vulnerable to the harms of climate change. I understand the value of shoring up our infrastructure, and we look forward to working with you on the issue.
Thank you. In 2013, I successfully worked to reopen the process at NOAA that allows states to nominate their nationally significant marine areas for federal protection as national marine sanctuaries. And Wisconsin has nominated an area of Lake Michigan. This proposal required and garnered tremendous local support, and a wide range of stakeholders have worked together for years to plan and advocate for to protect and celebrate this really remarkable resource. Do you support the mission of NOAA's Marine Sanctuary Program? And if confirmed, would you ensure that the pending designation process for the Wisconsin Marine Sanctuary moves forward without delay?
So thank you for bringing this up and for advocating. I do support the process, and I will assure you I will look into the details of that and move it forward to the best of my abilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Governor, I appreciated our opportunity to have a good discussion on a number of critical issues yesterday, so thanks for your time, and I'm going to follow up on some of those in my remarks. One thing that I didn't get to ask you about was this issue that you highlighted in your testimony today, which I watched and I thought was very powerful. Good paying jobs, and the story about your dad losing a job. I think that's going to be critical as we're in this recession. And to be honest, one of the things I'm worried about, we've had a huge development in America with regard to the energy sector. This is everything: renewables, clean energy, oil, gas, where we have become the dominant player in the world. Pretty remarkable. Almost everybody thinks that's a good thing, to be the superpower of energy again, all of the above energy, and it definitely produces millions of good jobs. It's reduced greenhouse gas emissions with the revolution in natural gas, stretched budgets for families. But one concern I have, I'm having a hard time finding anyone in the incoming Biden cabinet who will be an advocate for a strong energy sector in America. This to me seems like a very basic, non-controversial proposition. And in fact, out of the gates, some of the Biden administration's moves seem to be directly targeted at actually killing energy sector jobs or related sectors. So can I ask you to commit to being that advocate, given your important position, should you be confirmed, for the energy sector, broad-based, everything, renewables, clean energy, wind, as you've been a leader in, but also traditional energy, oil and gas, and certainly not to be an advocate for putting thousands of people out of work in this sector, which has already happened in the first week of the Biden administration. Can I get your commitment on that?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your time yesterday. But obviously, as Commerce Secretary, I will not be playing a primary role on President Biden's team as it relates to energy policy, but I will do everything within my power to help create jobs for American people. And as it relates to NOAA, I think that as Commerce Secretary, should I be confirmed, I will have the opportunity to help create thousands of jobs with offshore wind in particular.
Let me, well, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that, again, there shouldn't be discrimination against good-paying jobs, and I'm starting to feel that there is, and we shouldn't have that in our country, particularly as we're in a recession. Let me talk, and again, I really appreciated our opportunities to chat yesterday. I just want to get your commitments that we talked about. Having broad-based sustainable fisheries is going to be critical for America. You will be the leader in this if confirmed, overseeing NOAA. As I mentioned yesterday, over almost two-thirds of all fish harvested in the United States come from Alaska. So we are the superpower of seafood. No offense to my colleague, Senator Scott, who's sitting right next to me from Florida. But can I get your commitment to work with me on surveys, on data, to make sure the United States and my state continue to have the most sustainable, best managed fisheries in the world?
So first, let me say that in my state, we have over 4,000 people who make a living commercial fishing, and they have for generations. They did, their father did, their grandfather did. And I understand how important that part of the economy is in your state. And you have my strong commitment to work closely with you on making sure that the surveys and the stock assessments, et cetera, are fact-based, science-based, and we really take into account the needs and concerns of the fishermen and the stakeholders in your state.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciated your discussion of your own background on fisheries. I think that's going to be critical if confirmed as you come in to this role. Finally, on an area that we talked about yesterday, and I will have more questions for the record to submit, but on the healthy oceans, can you commit to working with me and other members of the Senate in a bipartisan way on the implementation of the Save Our Seas 2.0, which Senator Whitehouse and I were able to get over the goal line and signed by President Trump in December, which Congressional Research Service called it the most comprehensive ocean cleanup legislation ever to come out of the Congress. A lot of the implementation that will be under your leadership if confirmed.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Sullivan. Before I recognize Senator Peters, let me say we have 11 members who have not yet asked questions. 13 members have asked questions. And we have a vote at noon, which we'll work through. But I do ask members to stick very closely to the 5-minute rule. Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Governor Raimondo. It's certainly great to see you, and congratulations on your nomination and your willingness to serve in this capacity. Certainly, I enjoyed our opportunity to talk at length on a number of these issues prior to this meeting. And among the many things that I learned, I was very pleased to know your very strong family connections to the state of Michigan from your husband and all of your in-laws up in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And those Michigan roots that you have in your family are wonderful, and happy to hear that. And I also appreciate, and you've talked about the story again in today's hearing about your father's struggles related to manufacturing and the need for us to make sure that we have a strong manufacturing sector in this country. I know it's something that you feel very passionate about. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that our domestic manufacturing and that our supply chains are vulnerable because we have not prioritized and coordinated manufacturing policy at the federal level in a way that we should. I believe you can't be a great country if you don't actually make things. And in order to do that, we need to lean in. Given the fact that although we have 58 different manufacturing programs within the federal government, they're spread out over 11 different federal agencies. There's duplication, there's wasted resources, and there isn't a singular vote. And when we talked earlier, I talked about legislation that I've proposed to create a National Institute of Manufacturing that would give that unified voice and that coordinated strategy that some of our main competitors, like South Koreans and Germany's, are engaged in, to allow us to compete effectively. It would establish a chief manufacturing officer, require a national strategic plan for manufacturing, and elevate National Manufacturing Council, something that has been basically defunct over the last 4 years under the Trump administration. Build out manufacturing.gov as a one-stop hub for small and medium manufacturers to get additional help to make sure that their businesses are as successful as possible, as well as create a national institute. So my question for you, Governor, is if confirmed as Secretary, will you commit with this committee and with me to elevate manufacturing policy generally, perhaps speak to that, as well as strengthening our industrial sector by addressing some of the items that I brought up?
So thank you for that question. I will wholeheartedly commit to should I be confirmed, using all of the strength and tools of the Commerce Department to do everything I can to bolster manufacturing. As I said, it's important to me. It's how I was raised. I've worked very closely as my time as governor with the Rhode Island manufacturers and would look forward to working closely with you as well.
Well, thank you for that. One of the big challenges facing smaller manufacturing industries and domestic producers is unfair trade from foreign governments. We have an issue in Michigan with our cherry growers. We're cherry capital USA, tart cherry producers, but they are facing significant unfair trade from Turkey. That's had a significant negative impact on their ability to produce, and quite frankly, it's an existential threat. I've introduced legislation to empower the Commerce Department to be more actively engaged in self-initiating enforcement actions to help smaller manufacturers, smaller producers like cherry growers. You know, in Michigan, we have cherry growers who are facing this competition, and in order to fight back, they had to raise millions of dollars to take the case forward. These are small growers that don't have the money to put up to do that because they're struggling just to keep their operation functioning. And they really need a partner. And I certainly believe that the federal government can be that partner for those industries that can't hire an army of lawyers and economists to fight these trade actions. I'm working on legislation, self-initiation legislation with Senator Burr, a bipartisan basis. And certainly, if confirmed, would love to have your commitment to work on how we strengthen our ability to push back on unfair foreign competition for our small industries, small manufacturers, and others that are being impacted by this activity.
Thank you for bringing it up. You brought it up the other day. I hear your passion to stick up for the cherry industry. Absolutely, we'll work with you. We'll also commit to making commerce more accessible to the small companies and farmers, and work with Secretary Vilsack to do that. I think, as I told you, every year on his birthday, I make my husband a cherry cake with Michigan cherries. So on this one, you had me at hello.
Well, that's wonderful, Governor. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Governor, thank you for your time yesterday in order to work through some of these questions. I do appreciate the time that you gave me on the phone, and appreciate some of your comments that you that you made. I know that a lot of people have focused on the seas and fisheries, but instead of the high waves, I'm going to take you, or the high seas, I'm going to take you up there to spectrum. And let's look at the utilization of spectrum. And of course, the NTIA and their positioning in making certain that they're properly managing broadband, they're properly managing spectrum by the federal government. So we talked a little bit about 5G yesterday and having that 5G telecommunications network. And so a simple yes or no for the record, do you or do you not support nationalization of a 5G telecommunications network?
I do not. I share your concerns about a nationalized 5G network.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's look at the broadband mapping. We talked a little bit about the importance of getting rural America online and connected. And mapping is a big part of this. You have the 477 maps that FCC and NTIA have worked to complete. And so how do you plan to leverage the National Broadband Availability Map in making policy recommendations for rural internet access, putting a distinction between those areas that are unserved and underserved?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So first, let me just say I look forward to working with you and learning from you on this, and you have my commitment to prioritize underserved areas, including rural and tribal areas. I have heard for the past 10 months from many governors, Republican and Democrat alike, all across America, about how many of their citizens don't have access to broadband, which means they can't go to school, go to the doctor, sign up for a vaccine. I commit to having a strong NTIA, a spectrum strategy, looking at the maps, looking at ways to share spectrum, looking at ways to find spectrum to be available, so that we can close the digital divide. It's not a luxury good. I mean, everybody deserves access to broadband.
If I may, you use putting the emphasis on underserved. What we need to do and have to do is put the emphasis on unserved areas, those that have nothing. What got the federal government, I think, quite frankly, into a little bit of a problem during the Obama and Biden stimulus was they allowed underserved. That is why you have some cities that have a gig, and right outside that city limit, you have nothing. So, Governor, I would just highlight with you that is a very important distinction. And we need to prioritize these unserved areas, because you cannot, as we discussed yesterday, have access to 21st century economic development, healthcare, education, or law enforcement without access to high-speed internet. Privacy Shield, we talked a little bit about Privacy Shield yesterday. So how do you plan to continue the Privacy Shield negotiations with the Europeans?
Thank you. As I said, I understand the privacy shield is necessary for many companies, especially small companies who rely upon transfers of data. So I intend to, should I be confirmed, prioritize finalizing the negotiations so we have a successor agreement that enables these businesses to conduct their business.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'll go back. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Governor Raimondo, Senator Blackburn hammers home a very important point. there's $1.3 billion in broadband grants, $1 billion for tribal areas, $300 million for broadband deployment in unserved areas. We absolutely have to make sure that money is devoted to unserved, absolutely unserved areas, and make sure that those funds are not used to overbuild areas that already have some service. So I'm glad we've re-emphasized that point again. Senator Duckworth, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor Raimondo. Congratulations on your nomination. I enjoyed speaking with you last week, and I'm confident that your executive experience working with business to grow the economy in your home state of Rhode Island will prepare you well to lead the Commerce Department. In my view, I think Commerce is one of the more underrated departments in the federal government, and with strong leadership and robust funding, Commerce could play a critical role in helping American manufacturers, small business owners, and entrepreneurs commercialize products, reach new customers, and hire even more workers. I'm going to turn my volume up just a little bit. Sorry about this. On that note, I wanted to note how we can do to promote American innovation, supporting long neglected communities and leveling the playing field for U.S. companies competing with foreign competitors. There are three programs in particular I'd like to discuss with you, which we did talk about when we met last week. First, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. One of the most pivotal programs overseen by Commerce is the MEP. My state's partner organization with the MEP network, IMEC, delivers incredible value to Illinois small businesses and manufacturers by helping improve their operations, implement long-term strategies, commercialize their products, and grow their companies. And last year, IMEC helped small businesses in my state weather the COVID-19 crisis and assist others at a very critical moment in our fight against the pandemic. For instance, when a company in Bensonville wanted to remake some of its products to help first responders, healthcare workers, service members, and food service providers to decontaminate N95 masks quickly, they turned to IMEC to make sure that they were fully compliant with available guidance and working with the right government partners in the fight against COVID. Now, I know that you've had the same success story in Rhode Island itself. Your own Polaris MEP helped connect your state with a nearby manufacturing company to produce vitally needed PPE gowns last year. And I imagine you share my confusion when you heard that the Trump administration in every single budget has sought to eliminate all federal funding for MEP, not once, but in every single budget that they have put forward. Seeking to eliminate MEP, which is enthusiastically supported by Democrats and Republican members alike, may have been one of the most short-sighted and unbelievable proposals that Trump administration sent up the hill. I was pleased to join broad bipartisan majorities in Congress on multiple occasions to not only reject Trump's effort to gut the MEP program, but to go further in increasing funding in fiscal years 2020-21. Governor Raimondo, can you describe your experience working with the MEP as governor of Rhode Island and provide your commitment to work with me in championing even greater federal investments in IMEC, Polaris MEP, and the entire MEP national network?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I have had a fantastic experience here in Rhode Island with our MEP program. And I am a strong supporter of the MEP program. President Biden has said he would like to have it expanded, which is something I support. I think I've been clear today that I should confirm, I would like to be a champion for the American worker, but American manufacturers, and do everything I can, including executing MEP, to expand the industry, promote innovation, and help be a leader in manufacturing.
Thank you. Would you also show the same support for the EDA, Economic Development Administration, the EDA program, especially prioritizing President Biden's proposal to establish a new EDA division focused on helping disadvantaged communities get ahead? And will you help my office with some technical assistance to help us codify this effort into law to ensure that it lasts through successive administrations?
Should I be confirmed, I will make sure you have full access to me and all the tools in the department to work with you on that. And again, as governor, I see how powerful EDA can be in a community for economic development, and I would look forward to leading with you in that area, in your state and every state.
Thank you. And my colleague from Michigan, Senator Peters, just talked about the cherry wars with the country of Turkey. And you and I chatted a little bit about steel dumping and how desperately needed the Department of Commerce is when it comes to businesses trying to settle trade disputes. If confirmed as Secretary of Commerce, how will you prioritize trade enforcement and work with other agencies to combat circumvention of our nation's trade laws through practices like the transshipping of goods, while providing small businesses with confidence that their interests will be aggressively represented in the trade remedy process? They can, by the time that they can bring their own case, they're out of business and bankrupt. They need your help.
Yes, I understand that. As I said, I think the American worker can compete if the rules are fair, and I will enforce to the fullest extent possible the rules that Commerce has to protect American workers and businesses, with a special eye to smaller businesses that struggle, as you say.
Would you consider having someone within your offices, like a trade czar or somebody who would head up that effort when it comes to trade disagreements?
You mentioned that the other day. I think it's a very interesting idea, and I look forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Cantwell, and thank you, Governor, for being not only nominated, but thank you for your testimony and your willingness to speak to me, as it seems like you've spoken to everybody, which is incredible. Last week, I enjoyed our conversation. We talked about some of the same issues that many people have brought up. I'm going to go to the EDA first of all. You and I talked about how the EDA's presence in your state of Rhode Island, and I've talked about how impactful and what a growing impact EDA has had in our state. But I do have a question in terms of the president's proposed stimulus recommends an additional $3 billion for EDA. And I value and respect the focus of that. I have great concerns about an agency that has an annual budget of $330 million to be able to absorb not just the $3 billion that he's proposing, but also the $1.5 billion that we put in with the CARES Act. So how would you propose to be able to meet that capacity challenge, I think, that EDA would have to make sure that the money's being spent not just thrown out, but also making sure that it's targeted, well spent, and efficiently spent? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yes, thank you. So first, let me say, as we rebuild post-COVID, I believe that the EDA can and needs to play a very strong and important role in the rebuilding to help Americans get back to work in their communities. Secondly, I understand your concern. I have been governor for 6 years, a public executive for 10 years. Implementation matters. I have a strong track record of good management, transparency, and implementation. And what I will say to you is I understand the concern. It's obviously very valid. I need to get in the job and be confirmed, and we'll come back to you with your permission to have a discussion about, whether there are any additional resources needed in EDA in order to effectively implement such a large infusion.
I would welcome that. I think that would be wise, and I think that would be a great way to address the challenge. I'm going to switch over to NTIA. I know some others have asked you about this, but we talked about broadband. In your state, you have more urban broadband issues. We have a lot of rural broadband. Certainly this committee has done a lot of work in this. But one of the areas that we've really fallen short is on the mapping situation. Who really is served, and to what degree are they served, and what can we do to more accurately deploy the federal resources to those that it's intended for, the unserved and underserved. And so I would just encourage you. West Virginia was one of the first 8 states to be in the broadband mapping. There are now 22 states that are in there. They're using state resources as well, because you can't just rely on the providers to tell you where they're serving, or just one state entity, I think, or federal entity. I think you need like an all hands on deck approach. And I know this is important to you for your state. Do you have any other perspectives on how we can get to that broadband mapping accurately when we see the urgency that the pandemic has brought for broadband deployment?
Thank you. I share your urgency on this, and as I've said, it is life-saving. People need access to broadband to go to the doctor, to go to school, to have a job. So what I will commit to prioritizing it and also to engaging stakeholders. I have learned in my time as governor that if you talk to people on the ground, companies, constituencies, individuals, you have a better assessment of the challenges on the ground and therefore, better able to meet their needs.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. Sounds like a good governor approach to me at the same time. And lastly, I'll just mention, as I did to you, our NOAA facility that we're very proud of in Fairmont. We do a lot of supercomputing there. We also have the Enterprise Security Operations Center, which it does a lot of cybersecurity. You can imagine a lot of the data that is collected in the satellite sphere is very important to our national security, but also to our homeland security in terms of protecting life and property, in terms of being able to not just predict, but be able to front run certain kinds of what would potentially be weather disasters or other things. So I would just, I mentioned to you, I invite you to come to Fairmont upon your confirmation and to see the NOAA facility and to see where the great folks in Fairmont can be more helpful and use that expertise that they combine with the educational centers to be able to enlarge the presence. And my time is done, and I listen to what my chairman says, and he says, stick to the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Capito. Senator Tester.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, both chairmen, as a matter of fact, and I want to thank you, Governor, for being here. I come to you a bit blurry today, and I'm not even in Montana. I'm in D.C., which brings me to broadband.
I'm actually seeing double here on the screen.
Yeah, I know. Just close one eye and it'll be better. So I want to talk broadband a little bit, Governor. It's a 4 or 5-legged stool with the FCC, Rural Development, USDA, and NTIA. I think that is an incredible challenge in getting what many of the questions have talked about and getting broadband built into unserved areas. Tell me if you've thought about this, number one, and number two, do you have some ideas on how to get the different agencies to work as one? I quite frankly think we ought to put it into one. I know there's some difficulties in doing that, but it's really tough to have accountability when you got 4 different agencies doing the same thing.
Yeah. So thank you for this. And I would just again want to reiterate that this will be a strong focus of mine, because I know it's a problem on tribal lands, rural, everywhere. I have learned in my time as governor a bit about how to break down silos in government. It is difficult, but I believe it is possible if we have a shared goal, as we will in this instance. It's bipartisan, it's necessary. We need to break down the silos and come together to achieve that goal. And I will just commit to you that I will lead on the issue and also collaborate, as you say, with the FCC, with other areas of government, in order to make sure we deliver for the American people. American people don't care about our silos and bureaucracy. They want us to deliver, and that's what I'll work on.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to show how effective you are, I am now in focus. So it's incredible work, Governor, already, and you're not even confirmed. Look, in Montana, the wood products industry is really an important industry. It creates a lot of jobs, provides lumber for building homes and corrals and everything else. The duties on softwood lumber, I would hope you would maintain that where they are now, because it's fair and it offers some opportunity for forest management and creation of jobs across Montana, across the West, and across the whole country. Maine's also affected, and I'm sure Michigan and other places are too. So appreciate you doing that. I want to talk about the census just real quickly, because it's generally believed that because of the pandemic and because of this administration's inability to get things right, the census numbers aren't right. And I was wondering if you have any ideas on how to address that. I will tell you that I think it's a challenge in rural America, and it's particularly a challenge in Indian country where the pandemic hit them very, very hard. Do you have any ideas on how to after the fact, try to get these numbers accurate?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I've worked hard here to make sure everybody's counted. As I said, first we have to take the politics out, and secondly, we have to listen to the experts. So I look forward to being confirmed and getting in the seat and really rolling up my sleeves and listening to the experts and relying on, in the Census Department, and relying on their assessment and evaluation as to how accurate the data is. And if they need more time, then certainly open to that.
Well, just to give you a data point, in Blackfeet, the self-response rate was 29%. And I think it's pretty similar to that all across the large land-based tribes in this country. And so there's a lot of work to do. Very quickly, because you've only got a minute and 20 seconds. China's been brought up a number of times. You've talked about your philosophy of free but fair trade. I think this administration has botched up the relationships with trade with China by quite frankly trying to go it alone, and I don't think you can do that. I think not only has the United States been impacted by China's currency manipulation and other things, but other countries are too. Can you give me an idea on how you're going to deal with China? Because they're not going to change unless they're forced to change. And just to stand up at a podium and scream and holler about how unfair things are isn't going to get it done. And so can you tell me what your plan for China is going to be as far as this country and other countries, and what your recommendations to Biden and the Biden administration are going to be when it comes to China?
So first of all, I would say we cannot underestimate the threat. Second of all, it has to require a whole of government response, and I will play my role in that if confirmed. Thirdly, I agree with you that we need to work with our allies, and we need to be very serious because it's not fair what's happening to American workers.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Governor. Let me start out by apologizing if I ask you questions that you've already covered. I had to chair a business meeting on the consideration of Ali Mayorkas's nomination, which was reported favorably to the floor, so I'll apologize up front. I do want to cover Section 230 and the power of the social media companies. Let me just first start by asking you, do you believe the social media companies have amassed too much power, both commercially as well as from a standpoint of media and a role in censorship? Let's start just commercially, their ability to just deplatform businesses without any kind of recourse.
Well, I believe in competition and innovation, and as it relates to social media companies, I think they need to be held accountable for what they put on their platform. We need responsible online discourse and platform accountability.
That didn't really answer the question, though. Do you believe they've become too powerful? Do you think the federal government does need to step in and take some kind of action, as unclear what that action really should be?
That is an issue that I think I would leave to Congress and the FTC, but as I said, I believe in competition, and I think that it's important that we look at the social media companies in that regard.
There are really, from my standpoint, two components of Section 230 liability protection. One is protection from what people load onto your platform. The other one is in what they call their moderation policies. One of the things I think I proposed is leave in place the liability protection on what people load onto your platform, but really take a serious look at removing the liability protection for the fact that you maybe don't have transparent policies on how you do censor, how you do moderate, what your moderation policies are. Would you agree with that approach?
I would agree that we need some reform in Section 230, and I would look forward to working with you on that. I know you're a leader in this area, and I would use if confirmed, use the resources at NTIA to convene stakeholders, convene industry, consult you and other members of Congress to figure out the details of that reform.
I thought there's an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal written by Andy Kessler today, where he shares my concern that if Congress gets involved in this, chances are we'll probably do more harm than good. But one of his proposal really was to end anonymity. When you have people being able to hop onto these social platforms completely anonymous, you end up with the result we have. I thought it was a pretty interesting proposal. What would you think about, the basic concept is the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world have to know their customers so that if there is incitement, if there are problems, those customers can be held accountable. Do you think that's something you could support?
As I said, I think platform accountability is important. Listen, I've seen in my own state that misinformation hurts people. Misinformation, posted anonymously or otherwise, can hurt people. So we have to hold these companies accountable. We need platform accountability. But of course, that reform would have to be balanced against the fact that these businesses rely upon user-generated content for their innovation, and they've created, many thousands of jobs. So it's a complex issue. I know you're a leader in it, and I look forward to working with you.
Senator Johnson, let's put that Wall Street Journal piece in the record at this point. Is there objection to that?
Without objection.
Without objection, it will be done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my final minute, I want to revisit net neutrality. I'd rather not. I really applaud Chairman Pai in his courage against protests and threats of removing any types of policies that tried to create net neutrality, which I think would have done just the opposite of what net neutrality sounds like it would do. I haven't seen people being throttled back. I haven't seen this be an issue. What I've seen is continued investment in the internet, which is why Chairman Pai instituted those orders. Where do you stand on net neutrality? I'm hoping and praying this administration is going to re-raise that issue.
I have been in favor as governor, and I'd say generally in favor of policies which create more of a level playing field and more equal access.
Well, seems Mr. Chairman has left. Let me just follow up on that. Do you agree with me that it has not been, since Chairman Pai acted, we have not seen a real problem in not having some of these net neutrality rules in place? I mean, where's the problem? Is this a solution? Is this a solution looking for a problem?
As I said, I would look forward to working with you on this and in my capacity at Commerce, to the extent that there are levers in the Commerce Secretary's department, work with you on the issue.
Okay. Should I turn it over to Senator Sinema?
Yes, Senator Sinema, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman, and thanks to Governor Raimondo for joining us today. Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the nation and is a leader in creating jobs, economic growth, and opportunity for the people of our state. The Department of Commerce's mission is to overcome obstacles to development and create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity. The department achieves that goal through agencies and bureaus that focus on many important issues like broadband development, the census, and drought information. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues on this committee to develop bipartisan solutions, to invest in Arizona and create the economic environment we need to continue to grow and succeed. Governor Raimondo, if you're confirmed for this important role, I look forward to working collaboratively to create good paying jobs and continue sustainable growth for all Arizona communities, from our largest cities to our rural and tribal areas. My top priority over the last year has been working with local, state, and federal partners to keep Arizonans healthy and safe from the pandemic. Now, it's put a spotlight on the digital divide in this country, and I encourage the NTIA to play a major role in expanding broadband. As you know, the last COVID relief bill included new opportunities for NTIA, including a $300 million program to promote broadband expansion to unserved rural areas and a $1 billion program for tribal broadband. What are your plans for broadband expansion, and can you commit to coordinating closely with rural communities and tribes to ensure that this funding is utilized effectively?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I will commit to working closely with you, your colleagues, rural communities and tribes, and listening to the rural communities and tribes around their needs and the challenges. Every American deserves access to high quality broadband. And I'll use the full resources of NTIA, if confirmed, to lean into that issue and make sure we move quickly. COVID has shown that broadband can save lives and everyone deserves to have it.
I agree. You know, one of my top issues is increasing domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. In recent years, other countries, including China, have given massive financial incentives to semiconductor manufacturers to build factories offshore. This has shrunk the United States' share of the semiconductor industry. And domestic manufacturing is not only an economic concern. The Defense Department has identified a secure semiconductor supply chain as a national security issue. I've been working with a bipartisan group of senators to advance the CHIPS Act. Last year, we authorized the Commerce Department grants for semiconductor manufacturing in the Defense Authorization Bill, but we have more work to do. Will you prioritize this issue as Congress works to bring these jobs back to our country?
Thank you. Yes, the semiconductor industry is vital to American economic and national security. And President Biden has been clear that we will have a whole of government approach to semiconductors. And I plan to play an active role on his team, as you say, making sure that we have jobs for economic security, but also national security issues loom large in this area. We need a resilient supply chain to be secure.
Agreed. The accuracy of the 2020 census is very important to my state. Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the country, and we need to be sure the Census Bureau data is accurate. The previous administration harmed the nonpartisan history of the Census Bureau through attempts to add a last-minute citizenship question and prohibit the inclusion of undocumented persons in apportionment data. Also, the COVID-19 pandemic curtailed the ability of the Census Bureau to engage with Arizonans. So the Census Bureau will need to be transparent in discussing any shortfalls in the data that were collected due to limited operations. Can you commit to repairing the damage and improving relationships with historically undercounted communities today, ensuring accurate and cost-effective counts in the future?
Thank you, and you brought this up the other day as well. I commit to taking the politics out of census, relying on expertise, and doing everything I can to rebuild people's trust in the census. It needs to be accurate.
Thank you. In my last minute, I want to just briefly talk about NOAA. As you're aware, the Southwest United States continues to face an unprecedented drought, resulting in a wide range of impacts from wildfires to water shortages. In Arizona, we rely on water not only to brush our teeth and shower, but also for our economic security. And we are ready to work with other Western states to ensure we have a healthy watershed and continue to be responsible stewards of our water. We've got to use the best available science to make informed decisions. So will you commit to utilizing and strengthening programs such as NOAA's National Integrated Drought Information System to help us understand and address the impacts of this drought?
I will commit to working with you on that, and I understand how important it is to your state.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Senator Scott.
Thank you. Governor, thank you for the call we had the other day. We had the opportunity to talk about some of the issues that governors deal with, and I think it's positive when you see a governor come up and serve in an administration. One of the issues that we both dealt with as governors is the need for job creation and the need to try to keep the cost of living as low as we could for our families in our state that don't make significant amounts of money. I got into public service focusing on the fact that I want kids like me they grew up in public housing to have the same opportunity to live the dream as everybody else. And so what you're going to be doing as Secretary of Commerce, if confirmed, will be very significant, helping people all across the country make sure they have the same opportunity I had. In December of last year, you signed a memorandum with Connecticut, Massachusetts, and DC called the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is going to require suppliers of gas and diesel fuel to buy credits to sell them as early as 2023. In both of our states, the median income is just a little over $30,000 a year. So who's going to pay for this, and how is it going to impact the people that in both of our states don't make significant amounts of money? And how, I don't know if you track to see how much this is going to cost an individual.
Thank you for the question. So I believe that climate change is probably the greatest threat we face. And also there's an opportunity to create jobs as we combat climate change. 30+% of emissions come from transportation sector. And so I allied myself with my fellow governors to agree to look into the issue. And that is where we are. You know, I support that. And I believe long-term it will actually create jobs.
So I think all of us are very focused on climate change and how we're going to make sure that we deal with that. And at the same time, we got to keep our economy going. So with what you propose, what you've agreed to in the Transportation Climate Initiative, who will pay for that, and how will a family making, half the families, individuals in your state make less than $32,000 a year, how would they pay for that, and have you quantified it?
We have not yet. The document I signed, by the way, it was bipartisan, Republican and Democratic governors, was an intention to work together with our legislatures to develop a transportation climate initiative. So it's very early in the process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The nominee for Transportation Secretary, Mayor Buttigieg, last week said he was receptive to increasing the gas tax. And again, this would be something that would impact the poorest families in our country significantly. What is your position on that? And do you think that how would that impact your ability to do your job as Secretary of Commerce?
Yes, so I would defer to Congress to make that decision. Let me say this. I, as governor, am deeply in touch with how much increasing bills affect the average American family. Having said that, we do need to meet the climate change challenge, and we need funds for improved infrastructure, better roads, safer bridges, and which also creates jobs. So I would look to balance those interests and work as a piece of the president's team.
The part of the Biden administration's proposal was a $15 minimum wage. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, 3.7 million people are going to lose their jobs as a result of that. And as we all know, as Secretary of Commerce, your job will be to figure out how to help our small businesses, help them prosper, and because that's most where our job creation is. So what is your position with regard to increasing the minimum wage, and what impact that will have on our small businesses and our families across the country?
Yes, thank you. So I believe work ought to pay, and you shouldn't live in poverty if you work full time. As governor, I've shepherded through several increases in minimum wage, and we have not seen any impacts on unemployment. And so as with all policies related to wages or commerce or competitiveness, I will consult broadly with stakeholders, with industry, and take a thoughtful approach. But I know many businesses also support that and believe that work ought to pay.
Thank you, Governor.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, a ranking member still, I guess, but thank you, Senator Cantwell and Governor Raimondo. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your commitment to serving our nation. I really appreciated our productive meeting. I look forward to learning more about your plans to revive our nation's economy, to create jobs, and to ensure that every American has access to broadband, no matter where they live. Amidst a global pandemic that has devastated our economy, I urge this committee to facilitate a swift confirmation for Governor Raimondo so she can immediately get to work for our country. But I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about repealing solar tariff. The solar industry employs about 7,000 workers in Nevada, the most solar jobs per capita in the entire country. If we're to address the climate crisis and continuing to create those good paying jobs in the energy sector, we support the current tariffs on imported solar panels? And will you work with me to address this pressing issue and, of course, time-sensitive issue?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator. I understand from talking to you and your governor how important these solar jobs are in your state. And I look forward to learning more about it. Of course, I will work with you, and I understand it's time sensitive and challenging, and a lot of jobs are at stake.
I appreciate that. Usually we have nothing but sunshine in Nevada, but I hear today it is snowing on the Las Vegas Strip. So, but we'll have sunshine coming back soon. But speaking of the Las Vegas Strip, I want to talk about reviving our entertainment economy. Because in Nevada, while our economy continues to recover from the devastating impact of the pandemic, we're still facing one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Nearly 500,000 jobs are part of Nevada's entertainment and tourism ecosystem. Unfortunately, our once vibrant creative arts community is now just struggling to stay afloat. Performers, their support staff, they've seen their work come to virtually a complete halt as venues are unable to open their doors during the pandemic. I know this is happening across the country. Theaters are shuttered, and elsewhere, like I said, in the country, film, television, sports events, all of it. All these productions shut down in an abundance of precaution. So as we work to create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity, what are your plans to specifically help the creative industries stay afloat and get back to work?
Yes, thank you. I hear you about Las Vegas. You mentioned it the other day. My state also depends heavily on tourism and hospitality, so I see it. I expect to play a real leadership role with Brand USA and work with you and the industry and collaborate to find creative ways to get folks, traveling again, going out to dinner and the like. Again, it's important. And of course, I support President Biden fully in his reinvigorated approach to get COVID under control, which gives people confidence to go out and travel.
Thank you. And my last question I think I'll have time for is about NIST and the cybersecurity workforce. The Department's National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has plays an important role in supporting technological innovations and, of course, our STEM workforce. In particular, and I like this acronym, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, or NICE, is housed within NIST. It focuses on cybersecurity, education training, and workforce development. And according to their NICE Jobs current heat map, there are currently over 520,000 cyber job openings in the U.S. So in the interest of time, I have a few bills out there: cyber ready workforce, junior ROTC, cybersecurity workforce framework. We're working on all of this. What are your goals for supporting our cybersecurity workforce? 500,000 jobs open, probably more to be created. We know we've got lots more needs. Let's get folks into these jobs.
I could not agree more. I will work with you on it. I'll prioritize it. I have done that as governor. A big piece of that puzzle is job training, but I agree there are many jobs available and we ought to help Americans get them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to serve, and I yield.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Young, are you there?
I am indeed, Chairman. Thank you. Governor, it's so good to be with you again. Enjoyed our conversation the other day, and I'll be following up on that. Once again, thank you for your willingness to serve and for appearing before the committee. We discussed during our conversation the overwhelming geographic concentration of venture capital investment in 3 states. And that concerns me. It's detrimental to the U.S. innovation base, especially at a time when the U.S. is going toe-to-toe with countries like China. So we need to harness more of that talent across the heartland of America and around all 4 corners of our country. That's why I co-authored the Endless Frontier Act with Senator Schumer. The bill would bolster U.S. leadership in science and tech innovation by making a $100 billion strategic investment in emerging technologies. Additionally, the bill will deliver $10 billion to establish regional tech hubs across the country to launch innovative companies, revive American manufacturing, and create new jobs to reinvigorate our local communities. So we're talking here about a technology policy for our country. We've got a clear plan to implement one. I would ask you, Governor, do you think the Endless Frontier Act would help expand entrepreneurship and fuel greater innovation through these new geographic regions outside the traditional tech hubs that we have around the country?
Thank you, Senator. I certainly share your concern that capital is concentrated in too few areas. By the way, my state is not one of them, so I live it, and would absolutely work with you to, disperse that. We've talked a lot today about how to compete with China, and we talked about tariffs and defense, but some of it is offense, which is investing in America innovation and doing that broadly. And so I would be excited to, work with you on that issue.
It is about offense, and we had discussed this in our conversation together. I think I used the phrase that United States needs to outgrow, out-innovate, and out-compete China, and you agreed with that sentiment. If confirmed, in addition to perhaps the Endless Frontier Act and being supportive of that sort of initiative, are there any other steps that you might take to sort of execute on this mandate of outcompeting the Chinese, just as we outcompeted the Soviet Union?
Yes, well, there are many areas, and I'll be brief, but one of the areas of commerce is NIST, which has a huge role to play in standard setting. And I believe America needs to lead in the standard setting, especially as it relates to new technology. I know you care a lot about artificial intelligence and blockchain. And so I feel that that's one way in particular that we could help Americans to compete and lead and win.
Very good, very good. I have about a minute and a half left. This is sort of how this works. Not a lot of time, but I'm going to pivot quickly to supply chain. And there's been a lot of talk about supply chain management and retrenchment of vulnerable supply chains in conjunction with this pandemic. We know that we are vulnerable. 95% of surgical masks and 70% of respirators were made overseas at the start of this crisis. Pharmaceuticals and medical equipment might be the most visible offshore sectors. As we begin to recover from this crisis, we need to secure these supply chains. And to maintain long-term investments, we have to ensure continuous demand for domestic production. If that's not ensured, no one's going to stand up a factory to build essential items. This demand can't just be a one-off spike. So with that said, sometimes the issue is not a lack of total demand, but a matching demand with supply, especially in localized markets spanning across the country. One strategy could be mapping out and exaggerating demand and exploring various incentives to support American companies with moving supply chains. If confirmed, how do you plan to facilitate reshoring domestic supply chains?
Thank you. First, I'll say it will be a priority because it will help us shore up our national security and economic security. And the technical resources of the Commerce Department are second to none in figuring out the complexities of how to execute on that.
Well, very good. I know our time has expired, so I'll look forward to working with you on that important issue. Very important to the most manufacturing intensive state in the country, which is the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Young. And that concludes our questioning. Governor Raimondo, over the course of 2 hours and 37 minutes, you have been most patient and most talented in answering our questions. And I think you've learned a good bit about this committee during the process. I do not believe you will be serving as governor of the state of Rhode Island for very much longer. And I wish you well. Look forward to working with you. Senator Cantwell, do you have anything? If not, the hearing record will remain open until the end of this day. Senators are asked to submit any questions for the record by the close of business today, Tuesday, January 26, 2021. The committee asks the witness that upon receipt of any questions for the record, you submit your written answers to the committee as soon as possible, but no later than the close of business on Monday, February 1st, 2021. This hearing is now concluded, and once again, we thank Governor Raimondo.
Thank you.